Hey, everybody, welcome to the Tortured Man, as we call it, the Mancast. Today, we're going to take a look at conspiracy theories, and some which are probably batshit crazy and don't really hold a lot of water, and some that surprisingly do, even though they sound batshit crazy. And that's what we're going to get into today. So, we'll
Uh,
chat here to get her rolling.
That's right, folks. Buckle up today. We're going to get into some wild stuff. We're going to talk about a bunch of different conspiracy theories, but kind of a central focus or a jumping off point, if you will be Project Bluebeam. And for those who are not aware of what Project Bluebeam is, let me give you a little background here. It's some pretty wild stuff. So, it just a preface, by the way, conspiracy theories can sound wild and crazy until they're proven. And I'm not saying this one's going to be because it's pretty far fetched, but I've thought a lot of them were, and they've come up to be true. So I'll just, I'm always a skeptic, but I'll always lend some credence as well. So Serge Monast, he was a Canadian investigative journalist, and also known as a conspiracy theorist. And he created this book called Project Bluebeam, based on a conspiracy theory that he put together. He said it was based on an alleged plot to facilitate a totalitarian world government by destroying traditional religions and replacing them with a new age belief system using NASA technology. So in the early 1990s, he started writing this book. Well, I guess he started writing essays that led to this book on the New World Order and conspiracies as such, things hatched by secret societies, and so forth. And in 1994, he published the book Project Bluebeam, which he detailed his claims that NASA, with the help of the United Nations, were going to attempt to implement a new world religion with an antichrist at its head and start the new world order via technology simulated second coming of Christ. So basically talking about projecting a show in the sky, like a hologram, to make people think that it's the second coming of Christ, but instead it's, I guess, the Antichrist. So
I think this is already, I mean, this isn't conspiracy anymore. It's called Scientology. So,
you know
but
what's funny is
Surge, so
there's a
Surge,
Operation Snow White. Remind me of Operation Snow White, by the way. That's the Scientology conspiracy that
that's correct.
actually took place. One of the proven ones. So what
Oh,
were you going
right,
to
and
say?
we'll get to those too. So Surge had four steps to this whole thing, as you were starting to allude to, so everybody can keep up here. The first step was to create earthquakes, revealing ancient civilizations and discrediting all religions. Then the second step would have been a gigantic space show, holographic, that would merge Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, etc., into one image, becoming the Antichrist. Third, AI would control everyone's mind, convincing each individual person that God is talking to them from inside of their very own soul. And then this fourth step would to use technology to convince the world that the alien invasion combined with the rapture allows a complete takeover because of a fear-addled population.
Yep, you got it pretty much. So,
And they're all, and they now when he did this, this was 1994, and the irony is then a lot of what he was even referring to would have been completely impossible to do, but not so much anymore. Now the technology is actually there.
so yeah, speaking of that, and I'll try to see if I can put some of those videos in the background, some of the technology that's present today with just the incredible stuff they can do with holographics, holograms, and some of the crazy stuff that they're implementing and putting together all over the world. But anyway, um, I kind of want to get into some of the precursor to this whole conspiracy theory. Um, a lot of what led him to believe in the mind control parts of it. the ability for the government to tap into people's minds and get them to do things that they wouldn't necessarily do on their own, and to even go as far as to be able to erase those memories once they've done those things, stems out of MK Ultra, which was a conspiracy theory that's been proven. We've got the documentation now. And speaking of conspiracies that have been proven, there are myriad of them. There are anything from false flags to get us involved in war to plots to kill American presidents. And you could say that JFK isn't proven, but I would just say by the very virtue of the fact that they continue to stonewall after they've promised so many times to release those files and they still won't. I think it's pretty obvious. That's an admission in my opinion. But
it's not really. I agree with you. It's not a stretch that the CIA was involved. As a matter of fact, they admit now, actually, that they had some involvement there. Exactly what, they don't want anybody to know. And so, but you're correct. I mean, I used to always think that it would just the idea, the amount of principled people that would have to keep their mouths shut almost made it impossible to do such a thing. But I mean, we just convinced an entire planet that if they left their houses, they would literally actually die by contacting other human beings. And let's face it, a good 75-80% of this planet and the human population bought that bullshit hook, line, and sinker.
Absolutely. I mean, Woody Harrelson just got completely slaughtered for a joke he made on SNL, which I agree wasn't a very funny joke, but by SNL standards, it was freaking hilarious. Where he was just basically saying, somebody gave me a plot for a movie where, the government was going to lock everybody in their houses and Big Pharma was going to, make something that would make everybody sick. And the only way to get out of your house is if you took Big Pharma's drug, to get out. And he's like, that sounded too good, too crazy to be true. Nobody's ever going to believe that. So I tore it up, and lo and behold, that whole deal. And he got slayed for it because, he got off the script. That's the problem. He left the script.
Well, that's the problem. Right. And even people, the irony of a lot of this has been conspiracy theories is such a good way to introduce it, is that people who have a very healthy distrust of government like we do are oftentimes, I remember when COVID-19 started, before we get too far afoot here, that both of us had friends and family members who thought we were crazy for the things that you and I were discussing when that all came out. And now everybody's got a whole different tune. And we were always rock solid on the fact that something really wrong is happening here. This is less about a disease and more about government control. And it turned out at the end of the day, we were right.
I was written off by so many people that I still to this day don't talk to, just because they thought I was a crazy person, because I'm like, the shit came from a lab and the vaccine is bull, and they made it just to do this. And so even if I connected those dots too closely, the first 2 points were absolutely true, and most of them to this day wouldn't admit it to my face.
Unfortunately. We have people in common that we both lost because how outspoken we were being about it and how crazy we thought everything was. I think that conspiracy theories often are met with fear by the sheep, because the sheep are very fine. They have no issues if there are wolves in the flock, as long as they're dressed like sheep. They're cool with it, man. And a wolf is a wolf, and it doesn't matter if he's wearing sheep's clothing, he's still a wolf. And I'm going to call him out as a wolf. I'm going to go after him like he's a wolf. But sheep don't do that. If you're a wolf and you dress like a sheep, then you're cool with them. They don't care. Whatever you say must be true because you look like me.
Absolutely.
So that's just not how I operate.
So again, I keep going back to the conspiracy theories that have been proven. So, maybe let's talk about a few of those. How about we talk about the Gulf of Tonkin?
Right. So
is that one on your radar?
I'll bet most people don't know that Vietnam was literally the act of America getting involved in Vietnam was a staged fake attack on a U.S. boat called the Morgan. And it never happened. And it was reported by all our news agencies. It ginned up support for the Vietnam War, and we ended up fully 100% in Vietnam shortly thereafter, based on something that never happened.
100%. What about Operation Northwoods? We tried to do the same thing.
Oh yeah, that was for Cuba. Trying to gin up a fake war so we could go and attack Cuba and overthrow Fidel Castro and his government.
They discussed dozens of plots to do it. Several of them involved places like, poor places like Jamaica and Trinidad, where they were going to, because they were kind of like allied nations that Britain had brought into the fold, and therefore they were part of our pact. And so if they got attacked, then it would be a good excuse for us to go into war. But several of those proposals in that whole package of Northwoods were to attack American citizens, to attack Florida. Just so we would have carte blanche to go fight in the war.
And that was before our government hated Florida because of Ron DeSantis. How about the bad booze conspiracy theory, where at the time everybody thought it was the craziest thing they ever heard, but was later revealed that our own government during Prohibition poisoned people who may be drinking by putting literally millions of bottles of poison booze out there so that they could track where most of the drinking was going on by the dead bodies it left behind. The government now admits to well over 10,000 people that they killed during this, American citizens that they killed. And that's what they're admitting to. So if that's what they're admitting to, you could probably times that by about 5, and that's your real number.
Well, and they try to like do a little hand waving and pretend that, that wasn't their intention to poison a bunch of people by saying, oh, we only contaminated it so it would make it worthless. And then people wouldn't drink it. It's like, oh, did you put out a freaking press release to tell everybody you poisoned the booze? Because I don't think you did.
Next thing you're going to tell me is that the people see, and we were just talking about it last week. Now everybody's saying there are people saying that you and I are conspiracy theorists because we are saying that the government, whether they intended to do it or not, have now poisoned an entire population of people in Ohio, and to cover their own ass, they're going to let them die. And they're not, the EPA is not even checking the soil, right? It's insane what's going on. Another one of my favorite ones that most people absolutely do not know about is the First Lady scandal from President Woodrow Wilson, who had a stroke. And now the government admits that she effectively became the president of the United States without anybody's knowledge for around a year.
Yeah, so I mean, you thought Fetterman was bad. Let's go all the way up to the White House, baby.
That's right. So Woodrow Wilson, and it's no secret now historically that he had a stroke, but most people believe that he had a stroke very close to the election, and that really didn't have any impact on his presidency, when in fact it happened about a year before that. And his wife, let me see, I got her name right here. I don't want to, I can't remember it offhand. Edith Wilson. Mrs. Wilson, Dennis the Menace's neighbor. Edith Wilson was the first female president of the United States and was such for about a year's period of time. And she effectively was a far better president than her idiot husband. So, because Woodrow Wilson is one of the worst presidents in American history.
Oh, if not the absolute worst.
Worst, yeah.
Awful.
He put us on the path that we're on right now. And by the way, for anybody who thinks that, he's some great liberal president and one of the very first ones, this guy was the epitome of being anti-feminist. And he actually built rape rooms for suffragettes to get beat up and raped and so that they would stop protesting. He was a piece of shit from the word go.
Everybody gives him credit because women's suffrage came into play whenever he was in office, but begrudgingly, like he dragged his feet, fought it to the nail, and like you said,
he had rape rooms. They
used
built rape rooms in DC. They had rape rooms where they would drag these women who were protesting, beat them mercilessly, and then rape the hell out of them. It was crazy.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
great
one way to
guy.
get him to stop
And
protesting.
Hillary Clinton has said on the record multiple times that he is her political hero.
He was also a rabid racist too. When he first got into the White House, there were already black postmasters. That was kind of like the highest federal office held by blacks. Had them all fired. Just like, get them out
immediately. He also he also showed the famous KKK film in the White House and cheered for it.
Yeah.
What the hell was the name of that movie?
Something about America.
But it was about. And by the way, the Democrats are they're the ones. They were the brown shirts of the Democratic movement after the Civil War. That's what the KKK was for.
Right.
Yeah, they were real friendly guys. And by the way, were never Republicans. So, but there's
the new Florida bill.
So, do you know the CIA in the 1960s? And in the 1960s, there was a lot of weird stuff going on. We paid the Dalai Lama $1.7 million so that we could. We paid him the funding came from the CIA to stop the Tibetan resistance. And it was $1.7 million per year that was paid to the Dalai Lama so that he would look the other way. By the way, he did, and he took his 1.7. The man who only cares, of course, only about inner peace and money and trappings of money have nothing to do with his existence except for when they offered him $1.7 million, which in 1961 or 62 would have been about the equivalent of $50 million today. So the Dalai Lama sold out. He sold out.
That kind of coin can make you very enlightened.
I tell you right now, somebody dropped 50 million untaxable dollars in my office right here, right now. Yeah, it would change my perspective about things too. I'd get over a lot of stuff in a real hurry. But there's all kinds of hey, look, it's just a couple of years ago that our government, or at least the press, who usually covers for our government, finally were admitting that literally almost everything that you do, that your government has been with every piece of technology that's available, whatever era they were in, to literally know everything humanly possible about everybody in this country. They've been spying on American citizens since the word go. And now they just don't even pretend that it's not true. They're just like, yep, we totally do. We know everything about everyone. Does that mean that they're listening to you and me? No. That means if there's a reason to listen, they probably could find everything that you and I have ever said, at least through most of our lifetimes, because it's all been recorded somewhere.
Well, I think it's even stronger than that. I actually think that they are building a digital mosaic on every single person in the country, and maybe even the world if they have access to their electronics. But
this is what Serge was getting to in Operation Bluebeam, that they know everything about everyone.
You can see these huge server farms out west that take, I don't know how many millions of gallons a day to cool all the servers, where it's just government servers just sucking up data, just sucking up everything you put online, making a digital mosaic out of each and every one of us. And if they ever want to figure out what makes you tick, or what your secrets are, or what you don't want people to see that you're looking at, or whatever, they got you. So and that actually does play right into Bluebeam, because that's kind of the idea of what he's saying on one of those.
Well, right. So he had his 4 steps, and so I have notes here because I'm smart, but I'm not that smart. So, but step 3 in his manifesto was that AI would control everybody's minds and thought, and that they would know everything about each person so that they could use that to convince them that God was talking to them from the depths of their souls, right? So but that kind of information being collected on someone, if you think about it, if you know almost everything that has ever been uttered, every thought you ever had, every piece of porn that you watched on the internet, everything is collected and owned, right? if somebody has that kind of intimate detail on you and it's coming at you that you've never seen or met or ever talked to in your whole life, and they know that kind of stuff and they're in your head, you might think God's talking to you and trying to convince you of something that maybe you shouldn't be watching midget donkey porn or something. Maybe you should just give that up.
Well, that would
I'm
certainly
not,
be
but
one.
maybe you should.
I mean, me either, but that would be certainly one way that they could really jack with you. So say if they, projected an alien image in your bedroom at night and they were like, "We've been watching you watch the tranny porn, Ed, and we won't tell anyone, but you must do the right thing by our
The difference
people."
with me, though, and that's a good voice because that's what they sound like. And when they came into my room, I was like, bro, I'm looking at it right now.
Check out this Ishi, buddy. So anyway, no, so they could easily jack with people. And this kind of makes me think of one of the other proven conspiracy theories, which was Project Blue Book, which predates Blue Beam.
Yep.
And it was a government sort of project that they were doing, a covert project that they had going, where they were having military personnel, high level, special operators and stuff, supposedly investigate UFO sightings, extraterrestrial, viewings, so forth. And there's a lot to be said that they saw things, many of them, that made them go crazy. Several of the people like in the project that were like very sane, very high level people in the military, like end up going crazy. And so there's some speculation that they were basically guinea pigs to see if they could convince people that these aliens were real and that they were telling them to do things. I don't know if that's true or not, obviously.
I also think, like, for instance, I find it interesting. I find it interesting that they call it a conspiracy theory, for instance. So let's just take a look at Serge here and what he wrote. He didn't conspire with anybody to write that. Where's the conspiracy at? It's just something that he believed to be true through his own investigative work. Whether he was holding the full deck of cards or not, I'm not even going to get into. And whether you want to believe it or not is entirely up to you. I don't really care if you do or you don't. But I just don't like the terminology, because conspiracy takes people to actually conspire. And most conspiracy theories aren't people conspiring with one another. It's either you believe it or you don't. There's no conspiracy. This is a government invented word to try to make anybody who looks like they may have some information or stumbles across something look like a complete lunatic, so nobody will believe anything that's coming out of their mouth.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been proven. They've actually, we know that the CIA created the term conspiracy theory.
Correct.
And they did it for a reason. They did it as part of Operation Mockingbird, which is how they infiltrated all of the media. And that's all been uncovered and declassified and proven as well. So
funny how they're willing after everybody's dead. So these alleged conspiracy theory, after every part of that, and everybody who may have been a part of it or could have been a part of it is finally dead. And around the same time as when we found out that it actually happened and wasn't really all that conspiratorial, they just plain did it. And they're always willing to admit it after no one else can be harmed because of it. I mean, politically.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even then, if it's too big, they still won't admit it,
Right.
Like
JFK. We're never going to get around to that. I mean, when the Warren Report was, federally sealed for 50 years, and then the 50 years came and went, and they wouldn't open it anyway.
But anybody who still believes the government narrative is a fool.
Agreed.
So many inconsistencies in every single bit and piece of that.
The Manhattan Project. They denied the Manhattan Project for decades. It was 100% true. Now, obviously, did they actually be able to move through space and time and some of the things the Manhattan Project was supposed to be doing? Or no, probably not. But they tried. I mean, that's what they were doing.
True. Yeah. Have you seen some of like the holograms and shit that they're doing lately, dude?
Yeah. It used to be that you couldn't, that holograms were pretty obvious, but they're getting a whole lot better with it now. I mean,
It's pretty nice shit.
well, there's even places like parks now, um, where they have and we're not talking about CGI stuff here, which is computer created, which
Right.
but being
Super
able
cool
to
too.
being able to project it out to look real, not be able to create it only so it looks real in, say, a movie screen, but where it looks real in real life. And that technology is getting better and better. But there are some parks and like planetariums and stuff like that that are now using this kind of technology because it looks like you're actually there, and it looks like those
Right.
things are actually real. So I don't know that it can be used on the largest scale as Serge was talking about here for Project Bluebeam, at least not yet, but they're certainly far, far, far closer to being able to do something like that than they were in 1994. I think it's interesting, regardless of what his mental state of mind may or may not have been, but a lot of the things that he was talking about literally almost 30 years ago, 29 years ago, that weren't available then are clearly available now. I mean, it was as if he was seeing something down the line, almost like a Gene Roddenberry with Star Trek or Orson Welles, like they were seeing down the road a little further than most people could understand.
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, they think he was kind of ripping them off, but at the same time, the guy nailed some stuff that's pretty interesting. There's also like, so just to kind of take it back a little bit, the idea is that the government will have a lot of things that they keep showing us that make us think aliens are coming, like the actual like visiting is imminent, like we've been seeing lately with all these UFOs that they're shooting down and Chinese balloons and all this crap, right? And so the idea is that
admission of UFOs, by the way, they've never done that before.
And now they're like, yeah, we're pretty sure
they're releasing footage from fighter jets, for God's sake.
And so the question is, why would they do that? The government is never honest. They're never forthcoming.
Right.
Why
so what's the setup?
Decide to do this? So the idea is that they're setting us up for something where they're going to pretend that aliens have visited us, and they're going to use it as an opportunity to kind of mind control everybody into whatever they want, the New World Order and the Great Reset and all this jazz. And supposedly COVID was like a test balloon for it, right? So then, like, the way they'll fully bring this into fruition as far as his conspiracy theory goes. And see, I like to take parts of his theory and say these parts are right, but this is probably a little too far-fetched. This is the part that's probably a little too far-fetched, where they're going to project holographic visions into the sky, and it'll be, over India, it'll be, their gods, it'll be Shiva or whatever, and then over, the US, it'll be Christ, and over, Iran, it'll be, Muhammad, and so forth. And the idea is that they'll show all these prominent religious figures over each of these nations, and then they'll somehow be able to beam it in a way where they show all of these gods morph together into one singular god that now everybody's supposed to worship, and that's like the Antichrist as far as the Bible's concerned or whatever. And so at this point, this is where people jump off, because they're like, wow, so much of this sounded like it was rooted in some background, and like we could definitely make this happen, but now you're talking about something that's pretty far-fetched. But then, like, I don't know, you start looking at some of this footage and you're like, damn, they can do some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, another thing that I find interesting about all this too. So a lot of people, when you look at a guy like Serge here, that you would think that he's mad, and I think the more interesting question is actually not whether or not he could have been mad, but whether some of the understanding of things, some of the conspiracy theories that turned out to be true, just how deep and dark our governments can actually be, and his understanding as an investigative journalist, what a lot of that kind of stuff is, and his belief that he was right about some of the things that they wanted to do. Whether he was 100% correct or not, that to me is beside it. The interesting, or the question that I'd like, that I think deserves exploration is, was he mad to begin with, or all this information that he learned throughout his lifetime to put this theory together, did that drive him mad and make him paranoid and scare him to the point where he looked like a completely delusional, crazy SOB? But it was this very thing that he may have been, or at least partially right about, literally drove him mad. I think that's an interesting question to ask.
Well, yeah, again, thanks for bringing it back to that because, you know, he towards the end of his life, he was saying, I'm being followed, hunted by police. You know, his children were taken away. His daughter was
Yeah.
taken away first, and then his son was taken away. They said that they weren't getting a proper schooling, being homeschooled, and so they made them wards of the state and sent them to state schools. And then, like one day, they just arrest him, and then the next day, after he gets home from being arrested, he dies of a heart attack. And it's like, wow, this all is very neatly put away. You know, if you were the CIA, it sounds like you got Epstein. You know what I mean?
Right. Another conspiracy theory, as they called it, the whole Epstein thing. They're everywhere, and anybody who believes that Epstein killed himself, hell, I'll just give you a hug, and while I'm doing that, put you in a straitjacket, and we'll set you free slowly. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Here. I don't know the volume going here, but this is Paul Krugman talking about how it would be really good for our economy and for the health of the state, and we could forget about budgets and deficits if we could just get a lot of scientists to convince the people that aliens have come. He said, this is the New York Times economist, you know, one of the top economists in the country, unfortunately, because he's a total douchebag. But Paul Krugman has literally pitched this as a policy, to get people at the top to claim that we've been visited by aliens, so that we could cash in all kinds of checks and get high-speed rail.
Agreed. I think.
Good old Ronnie Reagan. Good old Ronnie Reagan did it, and he said, you know, I happen to think often to myself what a wonderful thing it would be to see everybody come together if we were visited by extraterrestrials, because it would force us to come together, you know, and this is in front of the NWO, mind you,
right?
So, or not the NWO, but whatever. Well, my favorite animal
is from planet Zutar. It's a Skernugglefluggin.
It's not a whale at all.
It's not a whale. It's a whale eye. But I mean, as far, and then and the rabbit hole is always there. I mean, the Illuminati and the U.S. government are one of my favorite ones. Here's one to try to wrap your mind around, because Canada is now considered like the most woke country in the world because Trudeau is such a progressive douchebag. But literally in the 1960s, the Canadian government had developed by their CIA, whatever the hell they call it, but they had them develop what was called gaydar, so that they could find out which federal employees, Mounties, who may be in the Canadian government or who may be in their military, who were gay, so that they could get rid of them, because they were horrified that gay people were going to take over Canada and destroy it.
Wow.
True story.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep, that is right from Reader's Digest, and they actually have a great reputation for being on the level. And during this, they do actually.
Yeah, I know, you're right.
So they came up with a machine that measured pupil dilation in response to same-sex erotic imagery. And the Canadian government used this to exclude or fire more than 400 people from civil service, the military, and their Canadian Mountie.
And what did Trudeau have to do with it?
Nothing. I'm just saying that it's interesting. In the 60s, Canada was so afraid of gay people that they were trying to invent a machine that could find them so they could get rid of them. And here, Trudeau would turn everybody in Canada gay tomorrow if he could do it.
Yeah, I heard something I thought was pretty funny. You can go get like your genitalia completely dismantled, or take, you know, some sort of medicines that will, you know, screw up your hormones for good. But you have to be 16 years old to get in a tanning bed, right?
Right.
But at 14,
got to be 21 to buy cigarettes or alcohol.
At 14, you can get your breasts.
But you got your penis chopped off and turned into a necklace if you want to. But you can't drive a car because you're not responsible enough.
Yeah.
It's literally
There you
insane.
go.
We've
Can't get a
gone
tattoo, by
completely
the way.
crazy.
Can't get a tattoo because
Nope.
tattoos are
No,
permanent, honey. You
they're
got to be
permanent.
18.
That's permanent, Chad. God, Lord, can't have that. I mean, cutting off your penis, you could probably, well, today's, you could always have it put back on probably if you wanted to. It's not as permanent as a tattoo, for God's sake. We are going to hell, man, and fast. Hey, everybody used to talk about purgatory. Yeah, that isn't even an option anymore. Purgatory would be heaven at this particular point. It is crazy what we got ourselves locked into here with all this nut job stuff.
So how do you feel, brother, about Blue Beam here, about what we've covered? Do you have any more to add? Do you want to wrap it here? Do you want to move into something else?
Oh, well, we can continue. I'll say this about Project Bluebeam. When I first heard about it, I thought it was total hokum. I thought it was crazy. I thought the guy was batshit nuts, and I fell into the sheep pot and was mingling with sheep. But because eventually I get my head right and decide I need to do a little more investigation and be a little more serious about whether or not. Do I think it's possible what he was talking about with current technology? Probably not. Do I think, however, that he was onto something, at least in parts? Probably so. At least enough to scare elites with real power into systematically destroying this man's life, and probably including taking his life. Which what if he is just a nut job? Let's face it. If you and I went into, say, New York City tomorrow, and some guy standing on a street corner screaming this very same thing at the top of his lungs, no one would care, and the government wouldn't get involved, and no one would get, because everybody would write him off as crazy. But Serge had enough bona fides that the government couldn't write him off as crazy, so they had to do something else, and that was turn him crazy to make him look completely insane and like a madman. And I think they went out of their way to do that, and they did that systematically by literally destroying, disassembling, and tearing apart his family in front of his own eyes.
Well, and we know for a fact that they've done this before. If you just talk about Ted Kaczynski, they ran him through these same experiments, these MK Ultra experiments, the mind control experiments, and now we're finding out Manson was probably run through those same experiments. We're finding out that they were running them on all kinds of prisoners, high-level prisoners. And here's another thing. I'm glad we're here, because I wanted to bring this up and I almost forgot. This is kind of just fresh off the top of my head. I haven't even talked to you about it, so I'm spitballing here. Let me see what you have to say. Think of the three most famous serial killers off the top of your head. Go.
Off the top of my head, Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, and Rifkin.
Okay, and when did they do their acts?
Rifkin was started in the 1970s. Charles Manson was the late 1960s, early 1970s. Jeffrey Dahmer was the 1990s.
Yeah, so from the 60s, when they started doing MK Ultra shit, till about the 90s, when it finally would have started to fizzle out. I have this theory, my own conspiracy theory, and that is the reason why we don't see these massive
clusters. Just a theory, Chad. You're not conspiring with anyone.
But it's a theory that there's a conspiracy. That's all I'll say. My theory is there's a conspiracy afoot. And that conspiracy is that most of our serial killers were created by MK Ultra, by government mind control, because we don't see that level of prominence in serial killers anymore. Name 3 from the last 10 years. Name 3 from the last 20 years. Go. Hard. Yeah. Really fucking hard, right?
It is.
Because
I'm sure they're there, but
shooters and all that shit, but it's not the same as the years of methodical killing, mindless zombie. Like, these people blend in their society, they seem normal until somebody says, like, you hear there was I heard recently about a woman, I think it might have been on Rogan, a guy who was talking about it. He knew her and she went on a date with Ted Bundy, and he was super charming, and really good looking and all this stuff. But she said that there was a weird point where she realized he started to predate on her, and his whole face contorted, his nothing could be seen behind his eyes. And she was like, oh fuck, I'm sitting across from a monster. He went to the bathroom, called her brother from the restaurant. He came and got her. She bailed. Found out a year later this dude was a serial killer. So
Boy, talk about talking about gut instincts and following yourself and knowing yourself well enough to go something is really wrong or amiss here.
That's so amazing. So yeah, what I'm getting at though is like these people, it's almost they're sometimes like they're trance-like, but and I'm not saying all of them. I think there's still plenty of just wild, nutty, crazy ass people, and they still exist today. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying like these big, prolific stories about these serial killers who kill, dozens of people, and that was a thing that was a big thing for like 20 years, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. Why?
So I just, out of curiosity, I looked up
I'm glad.
serial killers in the last 20 years. So just in 2020 in the United States, there were 3 just in the year 2020. And in 2021, there were 2. I never heard of them, mind you. I don't know any of these people's names.
How do they classify it? How many? What's their body count? What was the way they did it?
Okay, so we'll go with Charles Rowland, who let me see here. Victims 9. But not allegedly 9. Only convicted of 2. Daniel Prince. Yeah, he was only convicted of 1. They think he killed 4. Let me see here. United States. Travis Lewis killed 3, and they proved that he killed 3. And Kennell Brown, known as the Metro Detroit Killer, killed 7, and they convicted him of 7. Why are we hearing about these people? That's a good question.
Yeah, but I mean, 7's plenty. You think you would hear about that?
You're right. That's what I'm saying. Why aren't we hearing about this? I get that one guy who was only convicted of 1. That's not serial killer. He killed somebody.
I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer had 17 victims that we know of.
Yeah, but Jeffrey Dahmer was really green. He disposed of the bodies. He ate them so that they wouldn't create any harm to the neighborhood. So he was a really good guy that way.
I'm trying to think about it. It's like, so BTK killed 10 that we know.
And he claimed to a lot more. He claimed a hell of a lot more than that.
That's just who they've confirmed. And here's the thing. This is what I'm talking about. This is, to me, what makes it a real serial killer. BTK did it over the span of 3 decades. Yes. That's a serial killer. It's a long, protracted situation where they'll do it a few times, and then they go several years, and then they have this hunger that they can't stamp out, and they do it again, and they do it again.
Yeah, and BTK stopped for a very long stretch of time. Usually they think that these guys may be in prison or something like that for other crimes. Mm-hmm. BTK met a woman and got married and had kids. And his life he was living the life that he thought he's supposed to be living. Of course, the madness got to him after a certain period of time. And of course, that inner demon that just needed to do that finally broke through. But he took a long time off until he started killing again. And he was a deacon in his church.
I know. Yeah. Stand up, like model citizen as far as everybody thought.
That's how they caught him.
Yeah. Crazy, dude.
Because there was, they were using the computers. They had a computer, forensic computers at that time were kind of new. But the police department had a forensic team, and he was sending them back in those days a floppy disk, right? So he would write the letters and he would send it as a floppy disk. And there was a signature that all computers will put on the disk that you can't see. So if you're not a computer geek like he wasn't, he would have never known. And that can lead you back to the very computer that it was actually done on. And that's how they caught him. Otherwise, if he would have stuck to typewriting those letters like before he started using the computer, he never would have got caught.
Right.
It's crazy how that works.
It really is.
But you know, but it's an interesting theory you have there that it would be interesting to look to see because I will look, there's always been serial killers throughout time. I mean, we know that. And they're still obviously serial killers today. But there
was a 20-year cluster of these epic serial killers
that were like because when I was a kid growing up in the 70s and the 80s, right, you heard about this stuff every year or so. There was like the Son of Sam, the Hillside Strangler, the Boston Strangler, John Wayne Gacy, right? I mean, there were so many of them. Manson,
Bob Berdella,
right. And Manson was interesting. Rifkin himself. I mean, if you listen to his interrogation by the police officer who caught him, to listen to him talk about how he killed people was like how you would talk to your wife about where you want to take your son to dinner that night.
Yeah,
the disconnect
matter of fact.
Right. Most serial killers are psychopaths, right? So they don't have any empathy for anybody else, so they don't care.
Right.
But this guy was really different. Just how calm and nonchalant he was about admitting to everything and detailed about how he did it. And it was, I was just recently listening to those tapes on a Netflix documentary, and wow, what a psycho. But he sounded, to listen to him speak, he sounded like a thoughtful, normal, smart human being. And he's literally talking like we're talking right now, calm as a cucumber, literally about killing dozens and dozens of women for no other reason than he felt like it.
Crazy.
It's crazy. And then you have, we know Manson, into your theory, Manson for sure had a lot of contact with the people and CIA agents that were directly involved in MK Ultra, not just like one or two. Like with Jack Ruby, there's an association through one person, but it's literally all of the main players in MK Ultra all had contact with Charles Manson throughout the years, all of them.
Yes, sirree. That's the thing. Like that's the craziest shit. And then you find out about Jack Ruby. You find out that Lee Harvey supposedly kills JFK. And then Jack Ruby, who didn't have any kind of a record or a violent past or anything, just randomly shoots Jack Ruby. Randomly shoots Lee Harvey Oswald. And then it turns out he had been visited by one of the MK Ultra shrinks. And then the day that he was arrested for doing the shooting, the MK Ultra shrink shows up, and that's when we get the confession. And we find out that he doesn't remember a thing. And we find out that it supposedly, the story now is that he had an epileptic seizure and blacked out and accidentally shot Oswald. What a freaking joke, dude.
I was married to a woman who had epilepsy, and I've viewed that numerous times. I know what
you have like 3 seizure looks like. I know of.
What's that?
Show us your bullet holes, Ed.
So I know what an epileptic seizure looks like, and I can say so I couldn't have my ex-wife have a gun because she could just randomly shoot people every time she had a seizure. I can promise you that that never happened. It's just, I do think it's interesting. I mean, Oswald himself, obviously, is believed to be a CIA plant and trained by the CIA. And this theory has been around for quite some time. I think, to me personally, I mean, Ruby was obviously involved in this, but I think he was a plant. I think he was a patsy, and I think that's the way he was intended to be, just be a patsy. It was a way to clean up their mess and not have to deal with it.
That works.
Whoa. Welcome. I didn't even know if you could get in, dude.
Back. Fuck.
This is organic. Buckley, meet Ed.
That was weird. My test setup worked fine. Can you guys hear me?
We can, but he can't hear us, apparently.
Can you hear us?
Okay, there's a thumbs up. That's I couldn't read your lips, so that's weird. I can't hear
us though. Oh, weird.
Let me try some. Hold on a sec.
I didn't know it was going to work like that.
We're learning on the fly, people. We're learning on the fly.
Thought we had a backstage. So we were just talking about conspiracy theories.
He can't hear us.
Yeah, he can't hear us. So anyway, we should just continue. So anyway, this guy over here, this new guy, look at him.
I'm going to back out. Oh, no, it won't let me back out.
I'll have to talk shit on you, bro, and you can't tell.
Look confused if you think we're the greatest two people that ever lived. Nailed it.
All right. So anyway, with that, how do you want to proceed here, Edward? That was our friend K-Buck. We'll be bringing him in from time to time. I thought he was going to end up on a backstage that we could intro and bring him in, but somehow he just popped right into the show. So anyway,
okay. We'll figure it out. We can always edit it out or leave it in just to show that we really don't know how to do anything yet.
We're bumbling idiots.
We are just there. He is again. You got us?
Hey.
I can.
All right.
Sweet. What's up, dude?
Not much. Nice day here today. Had a bunch of slush and wintry mix over the past few days. Now we got one of those clear skies. Everything's looking beautiful. So that's about it for me. What about you guys?
Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead and rub it
in. It is 80 degrees, not a cloud in the sky. It is perfect down here, as it almost always is. I will always take it. The Northeast sucks. That's where I'm from. But I do like I'm from Pennsylvania originally, and they do have 4 seasons there. They have gray, suicidal gray, kill yourself gray, and summer. Down here we have 2 seasons. Summer, a very, very long one, and then spring, and then it starts over again.
Yeah. And black fly season down there too, don't? Isn't that a thing down there?
Yeah, well, I'm at the Georgia-Florida line. I could literally walk to the state line.
Okay.
In Kingsland, Georgia. So, yeah, the state bird is the mosquito.
Yeah, have fun with that.
It's true. I've been there. He's not lying. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when Chad was here the last time, he was running around we had all the doors open because we were moving everything in. And then Chad spent the evening running around my house, killing all the mosquitoes that were all over the place.
True story. They almost packed off a small child. But
they did.
I believe it.
It was our friend James's son. We got him back though.
Nice.
Kevin, we were just talking about Project Bluebeam and other conspiracy theories, so forth. Are you familiar with Bluebeam?
You know, I should be, because a thumbnail popped up on YouTube the other day for one of my favorite channels, and it was like 24 minutes, and I only had about 20, so I didn't watch it.
Right on. So it's
way to be prepared.
Theory.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know. Sign language interpreters today.
Yeah, actually, we could take another turn here. I had some other fodder for Buckley. So, Eddie.
All right, so we'll jump to that. So let's just finish out here.
Okay, sure.
So,
I like it.
The last thing I'd like to say, since we're talking about conspiracy theories, is that all conspiracy theories are, generally speaking, unless somebody is really just unhinged and it's not really a theory, they're just rambling because they're crazy and incoherent. Generally speaking, there's some truth in there. It doesn't mean that all conspiracy theories are going to come true. That doesn't mean that the people who think that they will come true are crazy themselves. Our government has been in enough malfeasance over the years that it is far more likely that whatever they are conspiring to do is probably more legitimate than you would ever want to leave credence to. And anybody who doesn't think that that's true, all you have to do is just look back right over your shoulder to COVID-19.
Over my shoulder, I saw 4 people with masks on today. I'm still
Right.
living it here in New York, bro.
Right. Well, that where in New York? Are you in the city, or are you
About 2 hours north of Manhattan, a town called Poughkeepsie.
Oh yeah, I know it. So yeah, I mean, if you're in the city itself, they still think it's going on in general.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. My sister's down in Brooklyn, and that's like their whole thing. I'm like, dude, force me to get a second vaccination so that my mom can enjoy Christmas this year at their house. I'm like, dude, I mean, I wrote it down that I did, but come on.
Right.
Yeah, I was at a homeowner's place a couple weeks back, and we were remodeling a bathroom for her, and she literally asked me if I had my vaccination. And I just met her, she didn't even know my name yet. She asked me if I had my vaccination, and I guess my face when I looked at her must have said it all, because she just immediately changed the subject. But I was literally 2 seconds from asking her when her last pap smear was. And she's like 70. But to me, that's tit for tat, baby. You're going to ask me about my personal medical decisions. You're going to get a question right back. And
Absolutely.
I don't have to share shit with you. So
Yeah, can I see your colonoscopy, please?
yeah, man. You got any
The raw footage.
Tell me about it.
Right. The raw footage. That's very clever. So are we going to move on to what you had mentioned
Just
to
a
me we were
quick-
going to be talking about here?
Is that cool? Do you have time for like 10, 15? Or are you getting close? You're getting close to having a wrap. You got
Who,
a
me?
couple minutes?
No,
Yeah.
I'm good. Let's go.
Okay, so all right, so transitioning here to another subject, fake sign language interpreters. All right, so we all know about the wonderful people who do the ASL work and interpret things for the hearing impaired. And so I want to throw a shout out, to the hearing impaired. I know that sounds like a joke, but there's subtitles, so you might be watching. This is not intended to make fun of you all. This is intended to make fun of the fraudsters that happen to show up at functions and decide that they're going to try to interpret to you when they don't know what the hell they're doing. And I don't really understand the reasoning behind it. That's the most baffling thing to me. It's like, what is the calculus? I know what I'm going to do today. I'm going to roll up to this press conference, and I'm going to just offer my services as an ASL interpreter. And even though I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I'm going to see what happens. Is that the idea? Because I'm shocked.
Well, this is for
I
our
think that's-
hearing. Here's for the hearing impaired.
So you're just as guilty. See? What are you going to say, Kevin?
Yeah, this is the Tampa chick. I
Yeah.
want to say it slipped my mind. It'll come back to me in a moment.
All right. Well, if you
What's
think of it,
funny?
just sign it.
See now.
This
here's
is a
what
murder case.
I want to say that I'm for this. And here's why. I can't understand sign language, but I know exactly what she's talking about, especially when she grips her own wrist because they're getting handcuffed, right? So I have a
That's the only
better
part you know.
understanding of what she's actually
She just
saying.
put some lotion on her breast.
Now
Now she's counting.
and by the way,
At
if
one
you're
point, she thanked the audience.
if you're hearing impaired, if I was hearing impaired and I was watching this, I'd be on the floor laughing, knowing that this woman, it would be like me trying to interpret what the premier of China was trying to say to Joe Biden, right? 'Cause I have no idea what the hell he's saying.
Or what Joe Biden's trying to say back.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd probably understand Xi Jinping better than I probably could Biden. But yeah,
with these people,
crazy.
I think a lot of it is just the potential for fame, and they realize, or not fame, but notoriety. And they realize, and this is just a guess, but I would think most people who are hearing impaired watching something on TV are more inclined to be reading the captions than watching somebody who, their hands are moving differently. You have different refresh rates. So, I mean, the same thing happened at Nelson Mandela's funeral, for crying out loud. The guy there had no idea what he was doing, but they just rolled with it because, do you have it on deck?
Before you get to that absolute legend,
Okay.
because he's a freaking legend. Let's go to this one here. This guy was doing it during Hurricane Katrina, and giving some seriously bunk info. And they'll actually like translate it on the screen here in a minute. he doesn't even look legit. That guy looks like he just came off the farm. But he ends up saying something about you will all need to have a bear hug and pizza, monsters, and help you at the time to use bear hug. That's what the translation was.
I saw the translation for the last chick too down in Tampa.
Amazing.
It was equally hilarious.
But I think you make a strong point, though, that they would be more inclined to read it because there's no room for error if they're just reading what's exactly being transcribed from what the speaker themselves are saying.
Right.
I would be more inclined if I was hearing impaired to probably just read what was on there, as opposed to watch someone that hand gestures and the way that it's being signed, depending on camera angles. You said about refreshing, they could miss something there. They're not going to miss something when it's just being spelled out for them exactly what's being spoken.
Right.
There's our boy.
But it doesn't. but either way, that does not make it any less hysterical than it actually is. Because
oh no, I'm glad they're doing it.
Oh, it's funny. Take some balls. Oh my god,
it really does.
This cat's name is Tasman. I'm sorry, I can't spell the man's name, but he is an absolute legend. I want a poster of this man on my wall. The fact, and then like there was so much hubbub about the fact that he was so close to President Obama and like he could have done something. So then, do you know what this guy's excuse was when they interviewed him? They followed up, and like somebody went to his village in Africa and was like, "What were you thinking?" And he was like, "I'm schizophrenic and I don't remember it." And he's like, but I am a legit sign language interpreter. That's true. He's like, I know what I'm doing, and everybody knows that. But the fact that I got some things wrong, you would make fun of me because I was having an episode and I got some things wrong. That's messed up. And then the reporter's like, man, I'm really sorry. Will you just do us all a favor and just show us some sign language so that we can see? And he refused. he's like, no, stop playing games, man.
So that's the irony, right? This is Nelson Mandela's funeral. So this guy had to have a long track record of actually doing this and screwing everything up, and no one ever took notice of it.
One would think, but I heard something the other day in regards to the lady in Tampa. A lot of times these things are commissioned out to private companies. So you can just roll into a press conference with a little name badge, say, hey, I'm Kevin, I'm here to do the interpretation. Nobody's going to question it. I'm thinking about doing it down at my town hall, but they're not televised, so it wouldn't have the same impact.
Just you set up a camera.
Set up to a podcast, man.
Let me know when you're going to be there, and I will come in video.
That would be hilarious. I'll pay money for that.
Well, then it's on next Tuesday at 7:00. Yeah, if it weren't for the perceived disrespect that it might, offer to people, I definitely would take the comedic side of things. But yeah, I'd be afraid to always look like an idiot. That's pretty much how I've made it this far in life.
But yeah, I get to it. I'm kind of the same way where I'm like, I mean, I feel bad for people who have lost their hearing, and that would suck. And if people are jacking with my only source of finding this information out, and they're up there like doing some hogwash like that, I might be kind of pissed. But I'm also might be like Ed and just like laugh so hard too.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. If I saw that, I would definitely laugh. However, to go do it intentionally, I don't feel like that would be. I don't think everybody would laugh about it the same way I would laugh about that.
Well, I think given the fact, I mean, I think if I was deaf, to watch someone who clearly doesn't know what they're doing. It would be hysterical. But generally speaking, though, I would think that if now Nelson Mandela's funeral is not going to do it, but the woman in Tampa during a hurricane, if she gave people, if she knows enough about signing that her gestures are right, but she's saying the wrong things, and she could have put people in harm's way. Why wouldn't that? You could criminally charge for that.
Right.
And then if I was a deaf person, I'd really be laughing my ass off about that. Not only did she not know how to sign, but her ass went to jail for it. So that would be awesome.
Speaking of ASL interpreters, and not just the fraudsters, but some of the really badass ones, because it's another avenue you can follow. There are some interpreters that get notoriety not because they're fraudsters, but because they're super extra. And like this cat, let me fast forward here a little bit. My guy, I don't know his name, but he's at a Beyonce concert, and he's the ASL interpreter for Beyonce.
What is going on here, man?
Yeah, dude. And I think this song is called like, I don't know, it's something really raunchy. So the lyrics are super raunchy, and he's like rubbing his breasts and like rubbing his ass. It's amazing. Oh man, this guy's the best.
That's some serious cojones, man.
Look at him.
He is working it. How do you not laugh at that?
Yeah, that is classic.
I mean, that's just hysterical. That this guy has just, man, the chutzpah to go out there and just act like you know how to do something you don't. It'd be really hysterical if like a neurologist surgeon, but he's not. That would be some funny stuff. See, I understood that, right? So I get his sign language.
Hey, I know some sign language.
I got one right here, bro.
Oh shit!
So
all right, well,
yeah, kind of silly. So I'm pro for faking sign language. I think it's hilarious.
Right on. All right, boys, you guys got anything else?
I'm good. Buck, it was nice to meet you finally.
It was my pleasure. Fun getting it all set up. I think I'm always going to have that issue of having to make sure I've chosen the correct listening device. I have way too many programs running in contrast with one another. But once we figure that out, I'll be up and running. We'll be good to go.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Cool. It's fun to talk to people.
We'll start making it a more regular spot where we can call you in and call others in and make it a bigger conversation. So,
well, if you feel free to put out your own information. I mean, our fan, my father, he'll probably look at
All right. Well, as far as social media goes, I do not use it at all except for YouTube. I consider that to be more public access television. It's hard to find me on there. Actually, let's hold off on that because I haven't really done anything. Keln Learning Academy is on there. It's hard to find though. When I set up my company, Keln, Keln, I did not realize that was a very close interpretation to a town in Germany, Koln. So I get a lot of cross traffic. Most of the traffic on my own website, keln.net, comes directly from Germany. A lot of disappointed people that don't want Nintendo games and Nintendo Power magazines. But if you do, definitely go check out keln.net. I have a bunch of vintage magazines, martial arts stuff, and just a lot of weird things that you wouldn't expect to find somewhere. So go search through that and have a good time. And I'm always willing to bargain. So if you see something that's $7 and you want to give me $5, shoot me an email. I'm not going to say no.
So everybody go ahead and do that. And by the way, if you end up at a German site, you're at the wrong one.
That exactly.
I literally just bought a vintage cigarette case from his site today.
Indeed, you did.
I am a qualified customer.
Right there, ready to go. Just
send it through the ether, bro.
I tried. It didn't work. I broke my monitor earlier this afternoon.
So out of curiosity, why a cigarette case, Chad? Because you don't smoke.
It's super cool. It's like an old red leather case. It's like an antique. I'm going to put it in the inn. It's a decoration.
Cool. Oh, yeah. Fits right in.
I was wondering about myself.
Over there for sure.
Yeah. I have a 200+ year old house and cool old stuff like that. It's cool to sit around. So
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, your place
Yeah.
is amazing. There's no two ways about that.
Thanks, brother. But well, cool. All right, boys. Good sesh. And let's do this again next week, maybe.
Sounds
Well,
great, gentlemen.
Yeah. Thanks for showing up, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Well,
for
I
stopping
look
by,
forward
brother.
to it.
This has been the Mancast. See us again next week. Subscribe, hit the like, leave us a comment. Peace.